Chapter 3.
Day-to-day life in the camp. Zonderwater was a city surrounded by barbed wire. There were no women, and the men could not come and go as they liked. With so many young men grouped together, it was important to keep control over them. Boredom led to frustration, and frustration led to bad discipline. Because the number of prisoners of war far outnumbered the staff, the authorities ran a great risk by leaving the prisoners of war to their own devices. During the first 2 years of the camp, the staff was under immense pressure and recreational activities were low on the list of priorities. Upon arriving at Zonderwater, one prisoner, Giovanni Palermo, quickly realized that he would die of boredom, nostalgia, and stasis. He started to do things because life is movement. To keep himself busy, he created the profiles of the fascist leaders at the entrance to the tent with clay and a bit of cement. When his statues were in place, Giovanni began to spend his time writing. His main aim was to distribute his writing to those prisoners of war who were not as convinced of fascism as he was. Giovanni and a few others established an academy for which Giovanni drew the emblem, a snake coiled around a pen with laurel branches. Apparently, the academy began to serve as a center of improvement, where many young men could learn to read and write, while also getting a political and fascist education. Spreading fascist ideas in Zonderwater was the last thing the authorities wanted, and a system of separate blocks were created. Those prisoners of war who were known as so-called ardent fascists were placed in camp blocks away from the rest of the prisoners of war population. When the outside employment scheme started, these men were not allowed to work outside the camp. The Prime Minister, J.C. Smuts, did not want South Africans, many of whom also held fascist beliefs, to encounter Italian fascists. Because Smuts's main reason for bringing prisoners of war to South Africa was to use them in labor schemes, the camp authorities had to find a way to send out only those who held anti-fascist or neutral political ideas. For this reason, the Declaration of Cooperation was put in place. Those who signed this document became known as cooperators, and they were sent out to outside work camps or farms. Those who did not sign were known as non-cooperators. They were held in the camp for the duration of the war and were also last on the list when it came to repatriation. The new Italian government, which was established after the fall of Mussolini, made it clear that they did not want any prisoner of war returned to Italy if they still clung to fascist ideas. Unfortunately, the system was not reliable at all, and prisoners of war and camp authorities abused the system as the pressure for more outside laborers mounted. Many prisoners of war signed the declaration without giving a second thought to political ideology. They simply wanted a chance to see the country and relieve the tedium of camp life. Often, outside employers realized that their prisoners of war workers did not have the skill they claimed to have. These men were sent back to Zonderwater, along with those who tried to escape from outside employment and those who established relationships with local women. The Zonderwater authorities classified these workers as unreliable, and they were sent to the non-cooperators block. Placing cooperators and non-cooperators side by side in the same block naturally led to conflict, leading in some cases to physical fights, stabbings, and at least one suicide. However, it was not all doom and gloom, and there is good reason why so many prisoners of war looked back on their time in South Africa with great fondness. Colonel H.F. Prinsloo believed that discipline went hand in hand with kindness and understanding. This philosophy was shared by Professor Henry Zonnebend, the Director of Welfare. As such, the welfare officers and even guards began adopting this principle, leading to overwhelmingly positive relationships between staff and prisoners of war. One such relationship was between Hy Berman, a South African officer, and Eduardo Villa, who began his successful sculpting career at Zonderwater. For Berman, Villa was maestro, and he recalled in his memoir how Villa enthusiastically embraced the opportunity to work on his art at Zonderwater. Zonnebend also admired Villa's work and attributes Villa's time at Zonderwater as instrumental in developing his unique style. With many prisoners of war participating in art and crafts, exhibitions were organized. Citizens from the surrounding area were invited to attend, and making good use of the opportunity, the prisoners of war artists brought in a lot of money for the benefit of the camp. One of the most important activities was music. From the first weeks of the camp's existence, singing could be heard as prisoners of war expressed their feelings. Later, with help from the Red Cross, orchestras were created and music making became contagious as camp staff also wanted to become involved in this creative outlet. Inspired by the prisoners' musical skills, the staff started to investigate how to expand their musical horizons. The prisoners were quick to take advantage, making musical instruments and selling them to guards became a lucrative pastime. This was one of the ways in which Italian culture began to expand the horizons of South Africans. Other entertainments included a circus in Block 5, attended by an estimated 20,000 men. Public lectures and literary competitions were popular and attracted the participation of hundreds of prisoners of war. The camp newspaper, Tra I Reticolati, gave ample chance to any prisoner of war who felt the need to express his feelings in the written word. On the other hand, Zonnebend and his welfare officers also used the newspaper to spread propaganda, especially when it came to the matter of the Declaration of Cooperation and re-educating fascist-minded prisoners of war. For those less creative individuals, there was sport, including soccer, athletics, boxing, and fencing. With Zonderwater being such a large camp, maintenance and building work was always needed, and prisoners of war were put to work building accommodation huts. One of the most successful ventures was the camp vegetable garden. Just like the arts and crafts, vegetables were sold to outside communities, bringing in extra money for the upkeep of the camp. For Prinsloo, it was important that the men achieved a level of education while they were at Zonderwater. At the Duke d'Aosta School, prisoners learned to read and write, and at the H.F. Prinsloo Vocational Center, they had the chance to develop new skills, all of which came in very handy when they returned to Italy and the rebuilding of that country began. Religion was important to many prisoners of war, and although South Africa did not have a large Catholic community, there were priests who attended to the spiritual needs of the prisoners. A fine example of a church built by prisoners of war still stands on the grounds of the camp. To Prinsloo's great frustration, and despite his best efforts to keep the men busy, some of them still preferred to create their own illegal activities. The black market flourished across the fence, but more dangerous was the many escapes that took place almost daily. Most of the time, the escapees were quickly caught and brought back to camp, but in some cases, guards lacked good judgment, leading to tragic events. In August 1942, for instance, one prisoner was shot as he sat inside the camp, near the perimeter fence. A prisoner of war in a tent nearby heard the shot and went out to see what was happening. Two guards were standing near the unfortunate man, and they explained that he was too close to the fence and was about to escape. When a UDF officer came to inspect the matter, he found the man laying 3 yards from the perimeter fence, which was within the space where the prisoners were allowed to be. A number of prisoners of war lost their lives in this way, and each time a commission of inquiry investigated the shootings. In some such cases, guards claimed that the prisoners of war insulted them. Guards mostly claimed they did not intend to fire their guns or to shoot to kill, yet the results were evident. All those prisoners who lost their lives while at Zonderwater were buried in the camp graveyard. Each year, a commemorative service is held on the grounds, attended by the descendants of those who were there.